Earl Nightingale said something that I love. He said, most people think they want more money than they really do, and they settle for a lot less than they could get. I think probably many of you were born with the very same idea I was, or raised with it anyway, that if you're going to earn any money, you're going to have to work really hard. Well, let me go back to what Napoleon Hill said here. He said, one idea is all that you need to achieve the success you seek. Now, he said, when riches begin to come, they're going to come so quickly and in such great abundance that one wonders where they've been hiding through all those lean years. Now, he said, this is an astounding statement, and all the more so when you take into consideration the popular belief that riches come only to those who work hard and long. When you begin to think and grow rich, you're going to observe that riches begin with a state of mind, with definiteness of purpose, with little or no hard work. He said, you and every person ought to be interested in knowing how to acquire that state of mind which will attract riches. Now, in another part, way towards the middle of the book, he reemphasizes this. He said, if you are one of those people who believe that hard work and honesty alone will bring riches, perish the thought, because it's not true. He said, riches, when they come in huge quantities, are never the result of hard work. Riches come, if they come at all, in response to definite demands based upon the application of definite principles and not by chance or luck. Now, we're talking about the definite principles. It's up to you to apply them. You want to stop and think, how can I fill a definite demand? Now, you don't have to go too far to see very poor service. These people have never gained an understanding of the law of compensation. The law of compensation is based on three very simple points. The amount of money you and I earn is always going to be in direct ratio to the need for what you do, your ability to do it, and the difficulty there will be in replacing us. Now, there very likely is a great need for what you do. You had nothing to do with that. That need was just there. Your ability to fill that need. All you have to do every day is put forth an effort to do whatever you're doing better. And as you do that, you're going to find that it'll become very difficult to replace you. There's very few pros around. A lot of people busy, but not too many doing it properly. Now, we're saying for you to get into this prosperity concept or get it into high gear, you must be specific. If you want some money, you have to be certain that you know exactly how much money you want. You see, what we're working with is our subconscious mind. It's the ideas that have been programmed into our subconscious mind through repetition that is forming the conditioning that is there now. It's that conditioning that causes us to do what we do and get the results we get. If there's poverty in this area or a lack of wealth, the problem is not in what we do. The problem is in what causes us to do it. You see, the action or the behavior is an effect. Now, this is what everyone works at changing. They're working at changing effects. If you want to change a result, it's absolutely essential that you go to the cause of the problem, the primary cause. And the cause of your financial situation right now is right in here in the subconscious mind. Now, what we must do is consciously choose, think, and build an idea of the prosperity that we're looking for here in our consciousness. Then we have to get emotionally involved in that idea. Now, people without money would have a difficult time accepting this. I have never met anyone with money that had a difficult time accepting this. As a matter of fact, they know it, and that's why they have the money. Now, you're working with your subconscious mind, and you have to know exactly how much you want. Now, let's stop and think for a few minutes about money. We live in one of the richest countries in the history of the world. There's absolutely no question about that. You can work productively all of your life. let's say for 40, 45 years. And you know, it's a strange thing, but only 1 or 2 people out of 100 at the end of their commercial career are financially independent. And yet anyone can become financially independent. And the strange thing about it is, you never have to earn a lot of money to become financially independent. Very, very few people earn a lot of money. There is 0.453% of the population that are earning $100,000 a year or more. Less than 1/2 of 1% earn $100,000 a year or more. Now that's shocking to the average person's mind. So you see, the classical error that most people make is if you want to be a millionaire, you have to earn a lot of money. And of course, that's not true. If you want to be a millionaire, you have to have a plan to be a millionaire. And that's all you need. Why aren't there more people become millionaires? Do you think it's possibly because they're not in the habit of setting one of those aside? What would you say a habit was? We said a habit was an idea that was fixed here in our subconscious mind with respect to money. Now, if there's such a small number of people make it, they must have a habit in their subconscious mind with respect to money, but I would say it's a bad habit. But you know, through conscious choice, we can form a good habit. We can renew the mind. And you only have to discipline yourself for a very, very short period of time. Now, do you know there's many people that'll tell you they can't save any money because they're in debt. Well, if you want to use that as an excuse, go ahead. But in my books, it's a poor one. You can be in debt and still put money to work for you. As a matter of fact, if there's only 2 ways of earning money, it would be an excellent idea to get both ways working, especially if you're in debt. If you find the task of getting your financial world in good order is something that you're just not able to do, I would strongly suggest that you seek professional assistance. Now, this is something that all wealthy people do. Now, I'm suggesting you decide exactly where you want to go or the star that you want to hit. You don't have to know exactly everything you have to do, but you have to go to someone who does. I mentioned earlier that many years ago I earned in excess of $1 million in 1 year. Now I'm going to tell you something that I'm not too proud of, but it's the truth. At the end of the year, I didn't have any money. I was one of those rich people that didn't have any money. I was living fairly well, but nothing extraordinary. I didn't buy any planes or trains. I didn't shoot off to Paris for a weekend. I wasn't in the habit of flying off to Atlantic City or Las Vegas and play on the tables. And matter of fact, I didn't even know where it went. There was some things I wanted that I wasn't even able to afford to buy. And they weren't extraordinary things. Now, if you've always worked for let's say an average wage, you might be wondering, well, how did he do it? It wasn't difficult. Do you know that most people have never sat down with someone that really understands money? I think if you needed an operation, you had to have your appendix removed or something, I don't think you'd talk to the guy next door unless the guy next door happened to be a very competent surgeon. I think if you needed a root canal, it'd be highly unlikely you'd talk to your druggist about it. Why is it we just ask anyone for advice? Why is it we just say, what do you think? The person we're asking probably doesn't. But they'll always give you an opinion. Well, we're suggesting you sit down with someone that really understands. Now, wealthy people follow the advice of financial experts. It is similar to the principle of the idea that if a person's body were sick, he or she would seek out a skilled physician for advice. Moreover, you should also keep in mind that even healthy people, if they're wise, periodically go to a doctor for a checkup. You know, I went to a doctor for a checkup here just recently. There was nothing wrong with me. Now, I want you to think about this. You don't have to be sick to get better. We say it's already been brought to your attention that very few people ever develop real expertise in the area of serious financial planning. They just don't do it. Therefore, we should seek out a competent financial counselor. Now, if you are not on the road to financial independence, this is probably why. There's three categories that people generally fall into. Number one, they're in a deficit position. That means there's more going out than there is coming in. They're in debt. Number two, they're in a break-even position. Everything that comes in goes back out. Number three, they're in a surplus position. They have more coming in than what is going out. Now, you know, you could be in any one of those three positions, and it might still be wise to sit down with someone who really understands money. You know, that takes some studying. As a matter of fact, it takes a lot of studying. It's a full-time job. It's not something you're going to do on a part-time basis. You've got to be as sharp as a tack, and I'm going to suggest that you have to have the left hemisphere of your brain fairly highly developed, because it's quite a technical task. And of course, I operate from the right hemisphere of my brain. Someone once told me I was a bihemispherical paraplegic, and I'm inclined to agree with them. I just operate from about half of my brain. That's the conceptual side. The other side is kind of useless. Now, a person that's in a deficit position could form the opinion, and it would be tragic, that all they have to do is get more money coming in, and that would solve their problem. However, if they're in the habit, if they've got a habit, now think of this, of spending more than they earn, would bringing in more solve their problem? No, of course not. If a person was in a break-even position, if they were in the habit of spending everything they earn, would bringing in more money solve their problem? Well, maybe the person should change a habit. Maybe the person should change the way they think. Maybe they should change the source of their advice. How many of you would really like to become financially independent? Be honest. Ask yourself, do you really want to change your financial position? Now, I'm going to give you a formula that the masses use, and because they use it, they end up broke. It's a simple formula. There's nothing complicated about it. They take their income, they subtract from their income their expenses, and what is left, they save. What do you think the problem is? I beg your pardon? Nothing left. No. It costs them more to live than what they're earning. Now, here's a formula for financial freedom. I like that better than financial independence, because I'm going to tell you money will generate a respectable amount of freedom. A person should sit down and establish financial goals. They should know exactly what they want to be worth a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Without giving any thought of how they're going to get there, this is where I want to be. Then they should add to that their expenses. Do you know that most people do not even have the brain cells to figure that out properly? I might be able to, but it would probably take me a long time, and I would really be afraid that I would make a big error. This is something that has to be done by a pro. Most people are not able to even identify all the areas they spend money. Well, they may think they do, but they really don't. When they add those two together, that tells them what their income must be. Now, that doesn't change their income, but at least they've got a target to shoot at. Now, if you want to become financially independent, sit down and decide exactly what you want. Go to a real good financial counselor, a financial planner, and let them get involved in what they call a fact-finding mission. Let them figure out what it costs you to live. And then you're going to know how much you have to earn. Now, here's how we change it. Let's stop and look at what the average person does. They go out and they work Monday morning, Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, Friday afternoon, and they earn, and they give it all to someone else. Every cent of it. They give it to the mortgage company, they give it to the grocery store company, they give it to the leasing company, they give it to the gas station company, they give it to the dry cleaning company. They give it all away. It was their money. They worked for it, they earned it, and they didn't even keep any of it. Do you know the ancient Babylonians go way, way back? They knew exactly how to become financially independent. They were a very, very, very wealthy race of people. They said that a part of all you earn is yours to keep. And what you should do is take the first part you earn. That's yours. Now, you're going to find people say, but I couldn't afford to do that. Oh, the truth is, you can't afford not to do that. Because you see, the latter years of your life, what should actually be the worst may very well turn, or the best, may very well turn out to be the worst. If you just said, I'm going to take what I earn between 8 a.m. and noon on Monday, and I am going to pay me that. Anyone that is prepared to make that kind of a commitment, I can assure you, can become financially independent in a relatively short period of time. And you know that's why most people never make a decision to live the way they want to live, because they haven't got the money. Then the truth is they don't need the money until they make the decision to do whatever they're going to do. All you need is a winning attitude and the ability to overcome procrastination and intimidation. No trick to having a winning attitude. It's all in the way you think. Now, if you're not making a headway you want, for goodness sake, go get some advice.
You know, a number of years ago, I had an opportunity to work in a couple of educational institutions. Now, when I go to any one of those places, I will put something like our stick person on the board, and I will put the idea in the bottom part of the personality that we've been referring to, the subconscious mind. And then I will write in there, SI, and I ask them to let that represent what is called their self-image. Now, I want you to really think about this. We don't have what is called a drug problem on our campuses today. Not at York University, not at the local high school, not at any school in this country. And I will deliberately walk to the podium and I will stop. And I'll pause for about 30 seconds after I make that statement. And you can see people elbowing each other or whispering to each other, wondering, where did they get this one? Because you see, that's kind of a ludicrous statement. The use of drugs is a symptom behind which there lies a cause. Because we don't have, as Maltz mentioned, we don't have a drug problem, we don't have a drinking problem, we don't have a financial problem, we don't have a relationship problem, and we don't have, you could say, a productivity problem. The only problem we ever have with respect to those areas is a self-image problem. Now put your thinking cap on and examine this idea. You can take anything that I'm going to say, or Bob, and you can reject it. You can do that. Or you can take the information and you can accept it. You can do that. Or you can just neglect it. And I said, don't accept, don't reject, and don't neglect what you hear. But I mentioned that only a fool would not take an idea. Kick that idea around to see if it would change, alter, and or improve the end result for a happier, healthier, more productive life. You see, if there was one thing that I ever wanted to get across to my kids or to you, is that our self-image, it sets the boundaries of performance in your life and in mine. We cannot outperform our self-image. We will never do it. Whether it's weight, and Bob will go over this in detail, whether it's income, whether it's relationships, no matter what it happens to be, Our image is the governor that sets the boundaries of performance in each and every area of our life. Our image. Now think about this. I want you to imagine for a moment, I want you to go way back to when Socrates was teaching. Now Socrates taught much, but he wrote very little. Plato took what he learned from Socrates and he put it into words, and we were all the benefactors of the work of Socrates. So Socrates decided that he was going to try to use an analogy to teach people something about this governor, about this concept, about this belief system, this idea, this image of self, and how it controls all the performance in each person's life. And this is the way he was able to do it. He said, I want you to imagine all these prisoners in an underground den. He said they have been there since birth, and they're all lined up beside one another. He said they're chained at the neck, they're chained at the feet, and they're chained at the hands to one another, and they all stand in an even line. They can sit, they can stand, they can turn their head each way, they can take a step this way and a step that way, but that is the extent of it. Which is symbolic to mean that many of us stand on what is called this 50-yard line of life, afraid to go for the goal because we might miss. We don't want to go too far back because we might fail. We don't seem to understand that it's got something to do with the concept or the image we hold of us. He said, now, I want you to imagine that they have never ever laid eyes on human life because the cave is dark, they cannot see one another. Now, he said, in front of all of them, there is a big wall from which shadows are moving back and forth. And he said, from these shadows, there are voices coming as though they're coming right from the shadows directly to the prisoners in this underground den. Are you with me? Now he said, the shadows and the voices are coming from one area of the den. Way back behind these prisoners, there are people walking back and forth, unaware of the prisoners further in the den. And he said what they are people coming in from the ocean, going up through a cave, carrying treasures from their ships that they took at sea. And as they walk by a flaming fire, and as they do, their shadows bounce off the wall of the den and come back at the prisoners who are staring at the wall. And as they speak, their voices travel, and they echo from the wall, so it would appear that the voices and shadows on the wall of the den to the prisoners is real. They have no knowledge of what's going on at the back. Now, I want you to imagine that one day, the chains break away from the one prisoner standing at the end of this line. I want you to picture that. He's standing here, and the shackles fall from the prisoner. As they fall from him, he looks and he sees a light coming down from the surface of the den, coming out in the shape of an elbow directly in the area he is looking. Now, since all of us, you and I, since all of us are motivated to move in the direction of the light, in other words, every single person in this room is genetically structured to grow, to move in the direction of a light. You put a potato in a cellar, and that potato will grow in the direction of any kind of light coming through to it. Well, this prisoner spots the light and begins to move in that direction. Don't you think that as he begins to move, there would be some apprehension of some kind? And as he gets close to the light, he puts his head into that elbow and he looks up and he experiences the entire spectrum of light to the point it almost blinds him. It's overwhelming. But again, being genetically structured to continue to move in the direction of the light, he begins to climb. And don't you think as he begins to climb, he's going to feel some fear? And as he reaches the surface, he looks and he sees the sky, some clouds, the trees, and all that nature has to offer. Don't you think he would now be in a state of awe? Do you think now that what he once thought was real is not necessarily real, that maybe there was something beyond the light? That, in other words, the way he was living and the results that he was getting or that he has, that suddenly now he realizes there is something more he could possibly do? And as he begins to walk around, he comes to a little lake. And he looks in and he sees an image, and he begins to run from the image. Wasn't he looking at an image of self? And as he backtracks, he stands at the den and he can hear the prisoners yell, "Return, we'll offer you rewards to tell us what you found beyond the den." Do you think he'd care for such honors? And if he did go down and tell them what he found, do you think they would believe him? And if he did go back down and he walked up, wouldn't they say, "Ah, you see, up he went, down he came. Isn't it better not to ascend at all?" You see, the real danger is you will never get from the underground den or escape from a prison unless you recognize you're in one. And many of us are like prisoners living in an underground den. And the moment that we begin to attempt to even see ourselves as we would rather, or as we could, or as we want to be, keep in mind we are forever going to be pulled, grabbed, held onto as a hostage by the prisoners in the underground den. By the prisoners in an underground den. Way over in Africa, they take a little beast when it's brand new. It's called an elephant. And they take this little elephant, they put a chain around its leg. And they take this 3-foot chain and they put it on a little stake and they put it in the ground. And you know, for days and days, this little guy, he begins to pull and pull against the stake and chain, but he's too weak at that time to dislodge it. He tries and he tries and he tries for days and days and days, but soon he gives up because he's too weak to pull the chain. Do you know, folks, years and years later, when this beast is fully grown, capable of pulling loaded railway cars, capable of pulling 10 times its own weight, at the end of a working day, they will take him, put the chain around his ankle, put it on that little 3-foot chain onto the stake in the ground. Something that he could pull out at a moment's notice. But he continues to hang on to that chain. He will not move. The only thing that might move the elephant is fire. He will actually stay until he starves to death. What is really holding the elephant? Conditioning? Well, you see, an elephant doesn't have a self-image. But here's the most interesting thing you can learn. There isn't a person in this room that was born with a self-image. The greatest point of awareness was one thing, that I wasn't born with a self-image. But nobody that I've ever met can explain how to alter it. The breakthrough for you, because image making, once we get a firm grip on it, is a truly dynamic idea. Now, believe me, I want to emphasize this. I don't know any one lesson or any half hour or 20 minutes that can alter or effectively alter your life like the one that you're going to experience right now. I want to suggest, what is it, Goethe, the great German philosopher, said time and time again? He said, before we can do something or anything, we must first be something. You see, the great conflict is in what you want to be versus what you want to, what you are versus what you want to be. As you are is not how you must remain. What you want to become, that's what we're working on. So before we can do something, we must first be something. Most people live and die and never fully understand the power of image making. But I want you to know that once you fully understand the image making concept, you can effectively use it for whatever good that you desire. For whatever good that you desire. You know, the change in relationships alone will absolutely stagger you. Will absolutely stagger you. The way you feel about you The insensitive comments that you may get. You know, they'll hit you and they'll just rebound off you like water off a fish because you'll have an understanding now that you're in control. Not the comment, not the person that's making it. You'll be in control. It says the knowledge of image making eliminates competition from your life. Think about this. Professionals create, amateurs compete. Professionals create, amateurs compete. The whole idea here is a simple one. In conflict, you have two choices. You have a choice to defend yourself, or you have a choice to learn in the conflict. If you make the choice to defend yourself, you're going to try to protect yourself. If you protect yourself, you're going to blame someone. And if you blame someone, you're going to miss all the joy that could be yours. You're a prisoner in the underground den, or you're on the surface enjoying all the greatness, all the goodness, and all the joy that is your birthright. The good life then is expensive. There's another way to live that doesn't cost much, but it isn't any good. It isn't any good.
I read somewhere in a book where it said, when you read a good book through the second time, you don't see something in it you didn't see before. You see something in yourself that wasn't there before. And stop and ask yourself, what areas of my life would I really like to change? Take a look at some of the results you're getting. We act, we behave, and feel. Now think of what we're talking about here. We act, we behave, and we feel. The vibration that we're in most of the time, according to what we consider our self-image to be. And we do not deviate from that pattern. This is the one stumbling block that many people have. Now, Maltz explained that the image you hold of yourself is a premise, a base, or a foundation. It's nothing but an idea in your mind upon which your entire personality is built. He concluded this image not only controls your behavior, yet controls your circumstance as well. Now, it would take a respectable understanding to grasp that. How could an idea in our mind literally change the circumstances in our life? You're going to know exactly how those circumstances can change. It'll be very clear to you. But I can assure you, you alter this image in your mind, you take this idea of what you want to be and learn how to plant it in here and release this idea. Like that, your life will change. Now, let's take a look at this idea of cybernetics. You know, a number of years ago, many years ago, I bought this book. It was out around 1960, and it was shortly after that I got it. And like most of these books I get, I read it over and over and over again. Now, let me digress for a second. I was in a seminar that Dr. Harry Roeder was conducting. And I'm going to tell you, this man is brilliant. He has an enormous amount of information of why we do what we do. And I remember we were working with a loose leaf exercise book. It was in Chicago that I was in the seminar, although Dr. Roeder is a Canadian. And he said something that really sunk in, and on the first page in the book, I wrote it. He said, you do not understand something until you can explain it to someone else so that they understand it. Now run that through your computer a couple of times. You do not understand something until you can explain it to someone else so that they understand it. Now that was written in a book a long time ago. I wrote it, as Harry said it. I'd read this book before that. And I read it off and on every year or two. I'll read it a couple of times. Someone came up to me in a seminar one day years ago, and they said, Bob, do you know what cybernetics means? I said, yeah. They said, well, what does it mean? I said, well, it's, and all I could see was the front page of that book where Dr. Roeder said, you do not understand something until you can explain it to someone else so that they understand. And I didn't know how to explain it. I went and got the book out again, and I started to study it. And I got some other books on cybernetics, some real heavy stuff, and I started to study it. Now let's read it. Cybernetics is the science of control and communication in the animal and in some machines. It is based on the fact that both biological organisms and some machines have sensors that measure deviation from a set goal. These sensors signal feedback into a coordinating mechanism, your nervous system, which corrects the output or the behavior of those same organisms or machines. Now, if you're reading a page and you go spinning past that paragraph, I think you'll have to admit it'd be pretty easy not to understand what you've just read. Now, you just read, in fact, I read it to you and you probably followed me. You might ask yourself, could you really explain that to someone? Well, I obviously couldn't. Let that represent a thermostat in your home. And we take this thermostat and we set the dial to control the room temperature at 72 degrees. That is the set goal. Now, what'd they say? It says it has a sensor in it to measure deviation from a set goal. It signals this deviation into a coordinating mechanism, which then corrects the output. Let's suppose the room temperature is at 72 degrees. Someone leaves the front door open, and it's cold. You're in the northern part of North America, and the temperature drops quickly to 68 degrees. The sensor in the thermostat picks up that deviation. It sends a message through the electrical system in the house to the furnace. The fire's turned on, the fan's turned on, until that room temperature is brought back under control again at 72, then it cuts out. Let's look at it in another machine. We'll say this is an airplane. This airplane, let's suppose it leaves Pearson International Airport in Toronto, and it's going to LAX or Los Angeles in California. When the pilot leaves the vicinity of the international airport here in Toronto, the pilot sets a cybernetic mechanism. That's called an automatic pilot. Then you see the guy with the 4 stripes wandering down the plane and, how are you today, sir? You having a nice trip? Enjoying yourself, ma'am? I used to sit there and I think, why doesn't he get back in that room up front? I didn't feel particularly comfortable screaming through the sky at that height, and the guy that's in charge of the ship wandering around, inquiring as to the state of my health. But I would feel much healthier if I didn't see you wandering around this plane. But it didn't make any difference. He could have come back and sat with us. That plane was under control. It had an automatic pilot, a cybernetic mechanism. Now, let's suppose that airplane got hit with some unexpected turbulence, and bang, it got knocked off course. The automatic pilot would pick up the deviation from the set goal. If it didn't, this thing might end up somewhere down around Juarez, Mexico. It signals a message through the electrical system in the airplane. The wings are changed. The engine thrust is changed, and that plane is brought right back under control again. This person has an image in their mind. I'll use a concept that we could all relate to. Let's suppose this person's a salesperson or they're a student. You could use either one. Let's suppose the salesperson sells $1 million worth of their product or service every year. Do you know large sales organizations can pretty well tell you what their sales force is going to write at the beginning of the year? If they have a contest and they send them off to some exotic place on a trip for writing so much business, and they name where they're going to go today, and they're not going to go for a year, do you know that they can book the seats on the plane now? They know exactly how many rooms that they're going to rent. That's because people very rarely deviate from their set objective. They're locked into a habit pattern. Or we could switch this, and let's say it's a student that gets a C average. Now, this salesperson may get a real pep talk in a sales meeting or something. No understanding, just motivation, no education. They get all wound up, and they go out, and in a week, they write $350,000 worth of business. Their self-image picks up the deviation from the set goal, sends it into a coordinating mechanism, the nervous system. A signal is sent, and the behavioral patterns will change, and that person will quit selling until they're back on course again. Now, they may go through a period where they write nothing for a month. Self-image picks up that information, sends a message through the nervous system, The behavioral patterns will change. They'll get up and they'll start selling again. But at the end of the year, they still have written $1 million worth of business. Let's suppose it's a student that's getting a C average. They bring the report card home. Parents turn the heat up, turn the TV off, bicycle goes, girlfriends, boyfriends are out of the picture. Rarely put the pressure on the kid. The marks shoot up and they get 100% on a test. Self-image picks up that information, sends a message to the nervous system. The behavioral patterns will change, and pretty soon that child's back on course again. What's causing the problem? It's this image in here. That's what it is. That's not what they want to be, but that's what they are. Results in control of you, you in control of results. You have an image here in your subconscious mind. Now, the first step in changing that picture. Now, what I want to suggest that you go someplace quiet, by yourself, and think. I mean, really think. Life is precious. There's absolutely no question about it. I think that there's enough evidence to indicate to you that you can have, do, or be the things you want. And you really think. Realize this power is flowing into you. As it flows in, we said it just is. It's without form. You make it what you want. And I'm suggesting that you build into your mind a picture of exactly how you want to live. Don't give any thought to how it's going to happen. What kind of a person do you want to be? Where do you want to be in your commercial career? What kind of a financial position do you want to be in? I can tell you one thing with absolute certainty. You've got to decide, how do you want to change it? You don't get the house by wishing. You decide, what kind of house do you want? Now, don't just build a picture of being a wealthy person. When Ray Stanford first suggested I could change, that's all I was interested in. And I got it. Howard Hughes did too. Now, build an image of being happy, of being healthy, and of being wealthy. And I would suggest that you build into it the kind of an attitude that you want for everyone else, what you want for yourself. And your life will be absolutely incredible. Now, all you have to do is build this picture in your mind. Sit down, take your pen, and describe exactly how you want to live. And I'll guarantee you, you'll change. And you'll change fast.